My name is Howard Dale. I'm with the Briarcliff Manor Historical Society. A short time ago, we started a project to do a series of interviews with long-time residents of Briarcliff Manor. So far, we've done two. This one today will be the third one. And we're very privileged to be able to speak now to Marie Alpert, who is a long-time resident of Briarcliff Manor and the proprietor of the lovely Images Gallery. Now, you may have noticed that we're not in our usual venue at the moment. We're not in the Historical Society. We are, in fact, in the gallery, and we're very happy to be here too. So, hello, Marie.
Hello.
Thank you very much
Pleasure.
for agreeing to do this.
Sounds
we're
fun.
really very grateful to you for doing that. So, why don't we begin?
At your pleasure.
So if we start then, just a little bit about what you may, or perhaps not know, I don't know, but probably do, about how your family came to the United States, where they were from, where they originally came to.
My family, both sides, came from the same region of southern Italy, where all poor people came from which all poor people came. People would ask me when I went to Italy, did I visit my family home? I said, I was in Tuscany. If I came from Tuscany, I wouldn't have come here. We would have still been in my Pitti Palace. But they came from poor mountaintop regions with soil non-arable, no job prospects, no industry, and so they came.
So I suppose like many people at that time, they came to find a better life in the US.
Exactly.
And how did that go?
Well, it went very well. My first ancestor, my maternal grandfather, came in with his wife and two small children in the late 1880s, and they settled in Manhattan. And Grandpa insisted, we don't speak Italian anymore. We're going to be Americans. We're going to speak English.
And what did they do when they came here? I mean, everybody has to live, right? So
He opened a newsstand
Ah,
under the 3rd Avenue L, very lucrative spot, 3rd Avenue and 34th Street, lots of business people going to and from work. And he had a huge apartment at 500 3rd Avenue.
Keys.
My keys?
Drop them.
Good idea. And they lived very well.
good. So, and they stayed in Manhattan, did they? Or
Yes, they stayed in Manhattan. My father's people, my grandmother died when my father was a young boy, and his father remarried, and eventually that lady and the three subsequent girls wanted to go back to Italy. Now we're getting to the 1920s, and my father said, I'm not going, I'm staying, I'm American now. And he became an American soldier in the First World War, was badly wounded, was left on the battlefield in a surgical hospital, so all the parades were over when he finally came home, and he decided to become a watchmaker. He was good with his hands, he was a skillful person, and he enrolled in a watchmaking school in Connecticut, and so opened a shop in Manhattan, became acquainted with my mother's family. They were from the same region, and eventually my mother and father met and married and moved to the Bronx, which was like moving to the country.
And where were you born?
On the Grand Concourse.
In the Bronx. Great. And so, how did your journey to Briarcliff Manor come about?
My husband's sister and her husband had bought a house on Chappaqua Road in the late 1950s, and we decided, after we were married, that they were the only family we had, we would find a place close by, and that's what we did.
Excellent. And when was that? About, you said the 1950s?
1957.
1957. You moved out, so you didn't live anywhere else between your time in the Bronx and coming out here?
No, we had an apartment for a while, and then we moved up here.
Do you have any particularly strong memories of your childhood?
All my memories are strong. I
So
remember
tell me a
everything.
couple of stories about your childhood then.
Well, the one thing that always pops into my mind is standing on the corner of my street in the Bronx, Claflin Avenue and 195th Street. Claflin Avenue was a dead-end street, so there's very little traffic. And facing southwest and seeing a Zeppelin.
Oh,
And it was flying in the direction of that famous airfield where the Zeppelin exploded. So was it that Zeppelin? That I don't know.
okay.
And there's nobody to ask.
That's a great story. So when you moved to Briarcliff Manor, you were already married,
Yes.
right? So how old would you have been about then, do you think?
22, 23.
And what did you and your husband do when you came to Briarcliff Manor?
We both worked for a large corporation in Manhattan, and we commuted.
May I ask which one?
Sears Roebuck.
Okay. So you commuted into Manhattan. And any stories about that you remember about your early years in Briarcliff Manor?
They were all happy. They were all good. It was much less populated then.
Any people that stick out in your mind as being particularly interesting at that time?
Well, one of it was our neighbor, who was a television anchor man,
Yeah.
and he had a stentorious voice. So when he would go out to summon his children or his wife, it was like Othello. Marion!
And where were you living at that point? Where in Briarcliff?
We're just where I am now,
Which is where?
Chappaqua Road.
Okay.
It's the line wobbles between Briarcliff and Ossining.
So you work with Sears, presumably for some time. At some point, you decided to set up a gallery. So how did that come about? That's very
That came
interesting.
about because I was an artist. I showed my work at several local galleries and a gallery in Manhattan and a gallery in New Jersey. And at a certain point, we got a notice that the New York office was going to be closed and everything was going to be moved to the parent headquarters in Chicago.
Okay.
And we knew from the outset we did not want to go to Chicago. And we said, we will stay as long as you need us. And then just let us go. You know, we got a nice severance package, so it was fine. We were young, we had no children, it was fine.
So you decided, what made you decide, well, you mentioned that you were an artist.
I was an artist, I showed my work at local galleries, New Jersey. And very frankly, the man who had the gallery in Ossining, see what Donald is doing? That's what Alan did. I said, anybody can do that. Stand there with his hands folded in front of him and look pleasant. Like, how hard can that be?
Was this a guy from the gallery in Ossining?
No names, no names.
How did you find this place? How did you?
Oh, Ah, now that's a story. We had been looking, finally, the office closed, and we had like almost a year searching for the right place. And every place we looked at, Lenny would, there weren't that many places available. He would say no, no. Maybe to open a fish store, but not to open an art gallery. He was very wise, and he understood retail very well. And he pointed out that we were getting older, not younger. And did we want a longer commute? Did we want cross-county traffic? There were very few roads. There still are not that many good roads to go. So we hadn't been working for a while, and this was the drugstore.
Oh, okay.
I had a charge account here, and they knew if I ordered something on the phone, they could just leave it in my screen door, and they would send me a bill at the end of the month. I came in for something in February of 1980, and the pharmacist said, "Oh, why are you here during the middle of the week?" I said, "We don't work in the city anymore." And since I say everything that's in my head, I said, "We're looking for a place to open a gallery." And he said, "Well, what about here?" This was February. "We're closing at the end of June. Lenny Gordon, who had been the pharmacist, still owns the building. Let's call him." So my Lenny and that Lenny and I had a conversation, and that Lenny said, "Please, buy the building. I don't want to own a store in New York while I'm down here in Florida, and some February morning, some old lady or young lady is going to slip on the ice and break her elbow, and I will be responsible. I don't want it anymore. Please buy the building." So we did.
Yeah, so that was in the 80s, was it?
That was 1980.
1980. So you've been here quite a while.
The gallery has been here 44 years.
So I guess it must have done well over the years because it's still here.
It's still here.
Yeah,
Is it wonderful? No, but it's good enough to keep me going.
good. So you worked at Sears. You've had the gallery for 40-odd years. Did you work anywhere else, or just the two?
Oh, no, I worked for Ziff Davis Publications.
Oh,
I worked on Popular Photography magazine.
did you really? My hobby is photography. I had a friend who worked there too. So just the three places then: Sears, Ziff Davis, and your own gallery.
Oh, there were also summer jobs and things like that, but they don't count.
Any interesting stories from your time as a gallery owner? Anything that sticks in your mind?
One time I was sitting here, the desk was at the same place, and it was pretty much configured the way you see it. And I hear a voice coming from the front door area. I say to myself, I know that voice. I know that voice. I know that voice is Hugh Downs. And it was Hugh Downs. He was visiting something and he saw an art gallery and he thought it would be interesting.
Did you have any other famous customers?
Yes. Lloyd Morse, who was a WQXR announcer, presenter. He and I became good friends because we both spoke Italian.
You still speak and read Italian, I imagine.
Once you learn it, you don't lose it.
You don't lose it. Right.
George Zimmer just went by and he glanced in.
What about Mrs. Astor?
Who else was interesting?
Mrs. Astor.
Oh, well, I
Brooke
didn't see Brooke Astor. I saw
Her.
dog.
Yeah.
She had a miniature poodle, and the chauffeur and also her manager named Maisie, not the dog was Maisie. He would bring her in. So when people would say, did anyone interesting come in? I'd say, yes, Brooke Astor's dog,
What was the name again? The dog?
Maisie.
Maisie, wow. In the time you've been in Briarcliff, you've been here for quite some time now. Has it changed a lot, and what ways has it changed?
It hasn't changed for me because where I live on a private road, and my house is set way far off the road, so I don't see or hear anything, which I love. The village has gotten much busier. The business district.
I imagine the shops around here have changed quite a bit over
Yes.
the years too. Any stick in your mind that used to be here that are now gone?
Well, there was a lovely clothing store called Sweet Inspiration. And I bought an outrageous dress that I couldn't wear now.
And wigs.
Wigs. Wigs was like peck and peck. Very classic, tailored sportswear. Got some really nice things there.
Country casuals.
Ooh,
Country casuals.
country casuals, yes. But that was way earlier, yeah.
Okay. So I guess this is what keeps you occupied nowadays, the gallery. Anything else you do besides this? Or?
Well, I used to be a very serious gardener, but physically that's impossible. But I have a crew that comes in and maintains it. And the book group, it's a group of women, we're meeting this afternoon. Joan and I are the original members, but there's usually around eight women active in it. And we only read usually books by people who are dead.
Okay. I know from my involvement with the Historical Society that this wasn't always a gallery, or the other place that you mentioned preceded it, that it was once a post office.
Yes, it was.
You know anything about that?
It was a post office until, I think, the 30s or 40s, when a man named Mr. Balzer, Balzer, I didn't know the gentleman, bought it. It was auctioned off by the government when they built a post office down or up the street.
Right.
And so it was auctioned off. And I know old Joe Weldon wanted to buy it, but I think they were asking something like $15,000, which he couldn't afford. $15,000 in those years was a lot of money.
I understand that there's something interesting behind the awning.
Yes, there's still the fascia board, but I don't think you can read anything from that. But if you go into the back room and look above this wall, you can see the old prescription sign. It would have cost too much to take it down. Wasn't bothering anybody, so I left it.
I understand that there's a kind of a motif of a sort of a Pony Express rider or something like that.
That I have no idea of.
I thought
Never heard
I
of
read
it.
that somewhere, maybe not.
I did hear a story that I can't verify, that wall had a soda fountain when it was a drugstore, and a young man who lived locally named Bryce Marden,
Yeah, artist, very famous
yes.
artist.
he was the soda jerk.
Is that right?
But I'm not sure. I mean, now it's,
He died a couple of years ago, and there was a 2-page obituary in the New York Times. It was a big deal.
yeah.
So, anything else that you would like to share? I think I've kind of exhausted my questions. Anything else that you would... Oh,
That's right, Moore's priceless. I pretty much told you everything.
Yeah, I think so. And nothing you want to add? Anything else striking that comes to mind?
Can't think of it.
Okay, so then we're done.
We're done.
Thank you again
A pleasure.
so much for this, and it's great. Yeah, really, really good.
Do you want to add anything?
You were great. Perfect.
Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.